Hey, darlings. A millionaire gave dollar to a pregnant beggar and then saw her in the grave of her beloved, who died years ago. Ricardo Martinez sat alone in the large living room of his mansion, a sophisticated and elegant environment, but without the warmth of a real home. The dark wood furniture and Persian carpets only accentuated the emptiness he felt. The only constant presence in his life was Tito, his faithful dog, who now slept at his feet, regardless of the anguish of his owner. Ricardo was a respected businessman, owner of an empire built with great effort and dedication. However, when looking back to the past, all he could see were the sacrifices he had made, especially the greatest of all, Amanda, the love of his life. He remembered how his unbridled ambition had taken Amanda away, and how after the divorce with Monica, his ex-wife had fallen even more in solitude. The nights were particularly difficult. Ricardo spent hours sitting in his office, surrounded by documents and reports, but his mind was far away, lost in the memories of Amanda. He remembered her smiles, the smiles they shared, and the promises that were not fulfilled. Each memory was a sharp knife that cut him deeply. One night, while caressing Tito, Ricardo made a decision. He couldn't live in the past, he needed to correct his mistakes. It was then that he decided to look for Amanda. At first, he tried to find her on his own, using the contacts he had accumulated over the years. But Amanda seemed to have disappeared completely. Desperate, Ricardo hired Javier Lopez, a private detective known for his ability to solve complicated cases. Javier was a man of few words, but with a perspicacious look that inspired confidence. Ricardo remembered the first meeting with Javier when he gave him all the information he had about Amanda, hoping it was enough to find her. "Mr. Martinez, I will do everything possible to find Amanda," said Javier with a firm but serene tone. Ricardo knew the detective was right, but he couldn't stop feeding the hope of meeting Amanda again. The weeks passed slowly, each day more heavy than the previous one. Ricardo continued with his business responsibilities, but his mind was always focused on Javier and the investigation. One day, while he was checking some documents in his office, the phone rang. It was Javier. "Mr. Martinez, I think I found a clue about Amanda. We need to talk in person." Ricardo felt his heart beat faster. It could be the beginning of a new opportunity, an opportunity to correct the biggest mistake of his life. He hung up the phone and looked at Tito, who seemed to feel the change of mood of his owner. With a deep sigh, Ricardo prepared for the meeting with Javier, full of hope and fear for what was to come. While he was driving to the detective's office, Ricardo could not help but reflect on the journey that had taken him there. He knew that Amanda's search was more than just an effort to alleviate his own loneliness. It was an attempt to redeem himself, to show that there was still a man capable of loving deeply, even after everything he had lost. When he arrived at the destination, Ricardo breathed deeply before entering. Life had given him a new opportunity, and he was determined not to waste it. Ricardo sat in the waiting room of Javier's office, nervously tapping his fingers on the arm of the leather chair. The detective appeared at the door, making a gesture to enter. Sitting in front of Javier, Ricardo noticed the serious expression on the detective's face. "I got some information about Amanda," Javier began. "He has moved several times in recent years, but I managed to trace some of his last steps. It seems that he has been living in a small town on the inside." Ricardo's heart made a leap. The possibility of being closer to finding Amanda brought a mixture of relief and anxiety. He looked at Javier, waiting for more details. "I'm going to intensify the search," he promised Javier. "I have some contacts in the region that can help us. I hope to have more concrete news soon." When leaving the detective's office, Ricardo felt a wave of hope, something he hadn't felt in a long time. As he drove back home, his mind began to wander through the memories of his time with Amanda. He remembered the happy moments they shared, the walks in the park, the starry nights, and endless conversations. Amanda was a loving and dedicated woman, always by her side, supporting her dreams and ambitions. She remembered how she smiled, illuminating any environment, and how her presence brought peace to her heart. But her unwavering ambition ended up keeping her away. Ricardo lost himself in his own desires, neglecting the love they had. Upon arriving home, he sat on the couch, Tito by his side, and let the memories flow. He remembered the nights in which Amanda waited for him with a dinner prepared with affection, the little surprises that she made to keep him happy, and how she was the anchor that kept him focused. The sadness for his absence was deep. Ricardo knew that he had been responsible for the end of the relationship, and that guilt consumed him. Amanda had given everything she had, while he had stopped consuming himself for his work and professional ambitions. Now, all he wanted was an opportunity to redeem himself, to show that he could still be the man that Amanda loved. In the days that followed, Ricardo maintained constant contact with Javier, eager for any update. The wait was distressing, but the hope of finding Amanda gave him the strength to continue. He knew that the journey would be long and perhaps painful, but he was willing to face any obstacle to correct the mistakes of the past. While he waited, Ricardo immersed himself in the memories, reliving every happy moment and clinging to the hope of a reunion. Each memory was a motivation to move forward in the search for the love he had lost, but that he still lived in his heart. It was a sunny day when Ricardo decided to take advantage of his rare day off to walk through the park. The light breeze and the singing of the birds provided a welcome relief to his mind, constantly attributed. Tito, his faithful dog, walked by his side, curiously sniffing the road. While walking, Ricardo noticed a young woman pregnant in a hurry near a taxi. She was warmly discussing with the taxi driver, clearly frustrated and distressed. Intrigued, Ricardo approached to understand the situation. "Sir, I promise you I will pay. I just need a little more time." The young woman, visibly disturbed, the impatient taxi driver responded firmly. "I'm sorry, but I can't wait any longer. We've been here a long time." Ricardo, moved by a pulse of compassion, I intervened. "What is the problem here?" he calmly asked. April, the young woman, looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I was going to an important appointment, and I forgot my wallet at home. I promised the taxi driver that I would pay him as soon as I could, but he doesn't want to wait." Without a doubt, Ricardo took the wallet out of his pocket and handed the money to the taxi driver. "Here is the payment for her," he said. The taxi driver took the money, murmured a thank you, and left. Abril, surprised and excited, thanked effusively. "Thank you very much, sir. I really didn't know what to do." Ricardo smiled kindly. "Don't worry, anyone could be in your situation. Are you okay?" Abril felt it, still a little upset. "Yes, now I'm fine. I'm just a little late for a medical appointment." Ricardo perceived nervousness in his voice and offered to accompany her. "I can take you. It's not safe to walk alone, especially now." On the way, Abril began to relax and told a little about his life. He was a brave young man, facing the pregnancy alone after being abandoned by the child's father. Ricardo was impressed by his resilience and felt an inexplicable connection with the young woman. It was as if he saw a reflection of his own loneliness and struggles in April's difficulties. "You are very kind, sir," said April, waiting for him to complete the sentence. "Ricardo," he replied with a smile. "Ricardo Martinez." April smiled back. "Thank you, Mr. Ricardo. I don't know what he would have done without his help today." When they arrived at the medical office, Ricardo said goodbye to Abril, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. The kindness he showed that young man brought him a new perspective. Perhaps by helping others, he could find a little redemption for himself. When he returned home, Ricardo could not stop thinking about Abril. His courage and determination inspired him. In addition to looking for Amanda, she would also try to make a difference in the lives of other people. Helping April had been the first step, and she felt that her redemption journey was just beginning. Ricardo sat in his office, staring at the window as the sun began to set. His mind was distant, lost in Amanda's memories. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Javier, the detective. "Mr. Martinez, I need to talk to you in person. I have news about Amanda," Javier said with a seriousness that made Ricardo's heart shrink. They found themselves in Javier's office. The detective's serious expression already indicated that the news was not good. Javier sighed before starting. "Ricardo, I'm sorry, but Amanda died years ago. He suffered a car accident shortly after moving inside." Ricardo felt the floor disappear under his feet. A wave of pain and despair invaded him, and he could barely believe Javier's words. The hopes he had fed for so long were instantly crumbled. With effort, he thanked Javier and left the office with a heavy heart. He decided to give him his last respects. Ricardo went to the cemetery where Amanda was buried. Each step seemed like a monumental effort. Upon arrival, he found the tomb, with fresh flowers recently deposited. He knelt, tears running down his face as he murmured apologies and promises never fulfilled. While he was there, lost in his pain, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw Abril, the young pregnant woman who had recently helped. She seemed surprised to see him there, but her gaze softened when she perceived Ricardo's sadness. "Mr. Ricardo, what are you doing here?" she asked gently. Ricardo, still excited, briefly explained his relationship with Amanda. Abril listened carefully, and then an expression of recognition crossed his face. "Amanda was my mother," she said gently. "She died when I was very small. I was raised by my grandparents." The revelation fell on Ricardo like a lightning. The young woman he had helped was Amanda's daughter. An unexpected connection that brought a mixture of sadness and relief. He sat next to Abril, both sharing the pain of loss and the memory of a woman who meant so much to them, and the mistakes she had made. Abril, on the other hand, spoke about her mother, remembering the few but precious memories she had of her. Abril's presence brought a new perspective to Ricardo. She saw in her an extension of Amanda, an opportunity to redeem herself and honor the memory of the lost love. When they said goodbye, Ricardo felt a spark of hope. Although Amanda was no longer alive, she could still do something significant. Helping Abril and being present in his life became his new mission. He knew he could never undo the past, but he could make a difference in the present and the future. On his way back to his mansion, Ricardo looked at the night sky, a sensation of renewed purpose in his heart. He promised himself that he would take care of Abril and the son she was carrying, honoring Amanda's memory in the best way possible. Ricardo could not stop thinking about April, the young pregnant woman he had helped and who now knew she was Amanda's daughter, seemed to be a crucial piece of the puzzle that had become her life. He invited her to have a coffee in a quiet restaurant where they could talk without rush. Sitting at a table near the window, Ricardo watched Abril as she talked about the difficult life she had had after her mother's death. "My mother was always my heroine," said Abril with a sad smile. "I did everything possible to protect myself and give myself a better life. After she died, I went to live with my grandparents. They were good to me, but my mother's loss left a void that never filled." Ricardo listened carefully, his heart tight with every detail. "Have you ever known something about your father?" he asked, trying to keep his voice firm. Abril denied with his head. "My mother never talked much about him. All I know is that they loved each other a lot, but something happened and they separated. I always wanted to meet him, know who he was. I think part of me always had the hope that he would appear one day." The words of April resonated deeply in Ricardo. An idea began to form in his mind. a suspicion that he could not ignore. What if April were his daughter? The timeline fit, and the fact that Amanda had never mentioned April's father reinforced his suspicions. I met your mother many years ago. Ricardo began carefully choosing his words. We loved each other a lot, but my ambitions separated us. If my suspicion is correct, it is possible that I am your father. April remained silent, eyes open pair by pair. The possibility took her by surprise, but there was something in the voice of Ricardo that made her believe him. Do you think it is possible? He asked almost in a whisper. Yes, I think we need to confirm it. Ricardo responded, feeling the urgency of his words. I would like to do a DNA test to be sure. Abril felt the mixture of hope and evident fear on his face. It's okay. I also want to know the truth. Ricardo and Abril decided to do the DNA test in the most respected laboratory in the city. Both were anxious and nervous while delivering the samples, aware that the results could change their lives forever. After the collection, the technician informed that it would take a few days for the analysis to be ready. They left the lab, knowing that the wait would be frustrating. During those days, Ricardo and Abril took the opportunity to spend more time together. Ricardo invited her to dinner at his house, where he prepared homemade food, something he hadn't done in years. They sat down at the table, and Tito, Ricardo's dog, also seemed to want to be part of the new family dynamic. You cook very well, Mr. Ricardo, said Abril, smiling. Please call me only Ricardo, he replied. And thank you, I have learned some things over the years. I want you to feel comfortable here. As the days went by, Ricardo was increasingly involved in Abril's life. She accompanied her to her medical consultations, worried about her health and the baby. In each consultation, the doctors assured themselves of reassuring them, saying that everything was going well. One day, while they were walking through the park, Abril asked Ricardo about his childhood and youth. He shared stories of his own childhood, of the rigidity of his father and the affection of his mother. He told how he had dedicated himself to business since he was young, always seeking success, but many times at the cost of his personal life. I always thought I needed to show something to the world, Ricardo said, looking at the horizon. But over the years, I realized that the true value is in the people we love and in the time we spend with them. Abril smiled, feeling deeply connected to Ricardo. I'm happy to have met you, Ricardo. I feel like I finally found a part of me that was lost. Ricardo sent you a lot of emotion and hugged Abril. I'm also happy to have found you. It doesn't matter the test result. I want to be by your side and help you and the baby. Finally, the day of the results arrived. Ricardo and Abril returned to the lab, both with their hearts racing. Ricardo and Abril were anxiously waiting in the lab waiting room, the silence between them loaded with expectation. The technician entered with a white envelope that seemed to contain the fate of both. With trembling hands, Ricardo opened the envelope, feeling the heart beat with force in the chest. He read the confirmation carefully, and then his eyes found Abril's. You really are my daughter, said Ricardo, with a broken voice due to emotion. Abril let go of a deep sigh, tears of relief rolling down his cheeks. Without thinking twice, they hugged each other tightly, a hug loaded with years of hope and dreams that were not fulfilled. I can't believe it, Abril whispered, leaning his head on Ricardo's shoulder. Finally, I found my father. Ricardo caressed Abril's hair, feeling a deep and unbreakable connection. I love you too, and I promise I'll be by your side for everything you need. I will not let you go alone. They left the lab with a renewed sense of purpose. Ricardo decided to take Abril to a quiet restaurant to celebrate this new stage in his life. During lunch, they discussed their plans for the future, sharing dreams and expectations. Ricardo, for the first time in many years, felt truly happy. I want you to feel safe and loved, Abril. Everything I have is yours too, said Ricardo, looking into her eyes. "We're going to build a life together, and I will be here for you and for the baby." April smiled, excited with the promise of her father. "Thank you, Dad. It means a lot to me to know that I can count on you." The days that followed were of adaptation and discovery. Ricardo dedicated himself to being present in April's life, accompanying her in medical consultations and helping her with the preparations for the arrival of the baby. She reformed one of the rooms in the mansion to turn it into a children's room, carefully choosing every detail along with April. Together, they visited baby stores, choosing furniture, clothes, and toys. Each small step in the preparation process for the arrival of the baby strengthened the bond between them. Ricardo, who had been focused on business for so long, now found joy in simple and daily activities. One afternoon, while they were setting up the crib in the children's room, Abril looked at Ricardo with gratitude. "I feel that I finally have a family. You don't know how much this means to me." Ricardo smiled, drying a tear that threatened to fall. "To me too, daughter. You have brought light to my life, and you have given me a new reason to live." They began to have dinner together every night, sharing stories of the past and dreams for the future. Ricardo was not tired of listening to Abril talk about Amanda, feeling increasingly connected to the memory of his great love through his daughter. The confirmation of the DNA test brought a new dynamic to the lives of Ricardo and Abril. Both began to adjust their routines and build a new reality together. Ricardo, always concerned about April's well-being, decided to introduce her to his friends and colleagues at work, integrating her completely into his life. The first presentation was during a dinner that Ricardo organized in his mansion. He invited some of his closest friends and business partners for a night of celebration. April was nervous, but Ricardo calmed her down, holding her hand before entering the dining room. "You will all love it," he said with a confident smile. The guests arrived little by little, and Ricardo, proud, presented Abril to each of them. "This is my daughter, Abril," he said, the obvious pride in his voice. Ricardo's friends were surprised, but quickly fell in love with the young woman, delighted with their sympathy and courage. Abril felt welcome there for the first time in a long time, part of a family. "Your father speaks very well of you," said one of Ricardo's colleagues, while Abril smiled shyly. "He has always been a dedicated man, and it is wonderful to see him so happy." The integration of Abril into Ricardo's life was not limited only to dinners and social events. Ricardo took her to his office, introducing her to the employees and showing them the company he had built with so much effort. "I am very happy to introduce my daughter Abril to all of you," he said in a brief meeting. "She is part of our family now, and I hope that everyone will welcome her with affection." The employees, who always admired Ricardo, were happy to see the human and loving side of his boss. Abril, on his part, she felt welcomed and began to see the company as an extension of her new family. While they were adjusting to this new reality, Ricardo and Abril also began to plan the future, especially the arrival of the baby. They spent hours discussing names, planning the baby's room, and preparing for the new addition to the family. Ricardo was enthusiastic about the idea of being a grandfather, and Abril appreciated the constant support and affection of his father. One day, while they were in the baby shop picking out items for the jeweler, Ricardo looked at Abril with a loving smile. "I'm so happy we're going through this together," he said. "I'll do everything I can so you and the baby have everything they need." Abril, excited, replied, "You're already doing a lot, Dad. Just by being here with me, you already make all the difference." The weeks turned into months, and April's pregnancy was progressing well. The belly was growing, and with it, Ricardo's expectation of meeting his grandson. He dedicated himself to every detail, from the selection of furniture to the hiring of a nanny to help April in the first months. A quiet afternoon, while they were sitting in the mansion garden, April looked at Ricardo and said, "Sometimes I wonder how it would be if my mom were here. But I'm sure she's happy seeing us together and anxiously waiting for the baby to arrive." Ricardo felt a knot in his throat, but smiled, holding Abril's hand. "She's with us in some way, and I'm sure she's proud of you. We're going to honor her by taking good care of each other and the baby." The connection between Ricardo and Abril was strengthened every day, and the new reality they were building together was full of love, support, and hope. Both knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but they were ready to face them together as a true family. The days in Ricardo's mansion and Abril's were full of preparations and expectations for the arrival of the baby. The bond between father and daughter was strengthened, and the new reality they were building together seemed unbreakable. However, the shadows of the past would soon come to disturb that newly found peace. Monica, Ricardo's ex-wife, was back in the city. She had heard rumors about Ricardo's recently discovered daughter and saw an opportunity to re-enter her life, with intentions far from being benevolent. Monica was always a calculating woman and knew how to manipulate situations for her benefit. One day, while Ricardo was at work and Abril was preparing for a medical consultation, Monica appeared at the door of the mansion. Abril, without knowing who it was, opened the door and was immediately confronted by Monica's dominant presence. "It must be Abril," said Monica, her tone of voice mixing sweet, false, and sarcasm. "I am Monica, Ricardo's ex-wife. Can we talk?" Abril, always polite, invited Monica to come in. They sat in the living room, and Monica began to ask personal and incisive questions about Abril's relationship with Ricardo, trying to plant doubtful seeds. "You know, Abril, Ricardo has a history of being an absent father." Monica began pretending concern. "I have been disappointed so many times, and I fear that I can do the same with you. Have you thought about that?" April felt a growing discomfort, but she tried to keep calm. "My dad is trying to change, and he has been very present and loving to me," she replied, trying to defend Ricardo. Monica smiled coldly. "I hope you're right, but men like Ricardo don't change easily. He has already sacrificed many people for his ambition. Just be careful." The conversation left Abril restless. Monica's words resonated in his mind, creating doubts and insecurities. When Ricardo arrived home, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. "Daughter, what happened?" he asked, worried. Abril hesitated but decided to tell the truth. "Monica, your ex-wife, came here today. She said things that made me worried. She talked about you being an absent father and made me question if you were really going to be here for me and for the baby." Ricardo was pale. He knew that Monica was capable of manipulating situations to cause discord. "Daughter, Monica has always had her own interests. I know I made mistakes in the past, but I am totally committed to being the father and grandfather that you and the baby deserve." Abril looked at him, looking for sincerity in his eyes. "I want to believe you, Dad, but it is difficult to hear those things and not worry." Ricardo held Abril's hand firmly. "I understand your concerns, and I promise to prove to you that I am a changed man. I will not allow Monica or any other person to interfere in our happiness." In the following days, Monica continued her attempts to poison the relationship between Ricardo and Abril. She made unexpected visits, left malicious comments, and remembered old conflicts. Each interaction was a proof of the newly formed trust between father and daughter. Ricardo, determined to protect Abril, began to limit contact with Monica. He spoke with Abril about the past, explaining his mistakes and how he was working to redeem himself. April, on the other hand, decided to trust Ricardo, seeing his sincere efforts to maintain peace and build a better future. The following weeks were marked by a growing tension between Ricardo and April. The insinuations of Monica left traces, And despite Ricardo's efforts to reassure his daughter, the doubts persisted. Each conversation with Monica seemed to feed the insecurities of April, making her question if her father was really committed to being present. Ricardo, realizing the emotional wear that this caused, decided to seek help. He contacted Javier, the detective who had been crucial in the search for Amanda, to ask for advice and support. Javier, always discreet and efficient, accepted Ricardo's request without a doubt. "Ricardo, I will do everything I can to help you. I know how important this is for you," said Javier during a meeting at a discreet cafe. Perhaps there is more about Amanda's past that can clarify many things. As Javier began to investigate again, Ricardo focused on rebuilding April's confidence. He took her to medical consultations, he actively participated in baby preparations, and invited her to quiet dinners, where they could talk and reconnect. "Dad, I know you're trying, but it's hard to ignore everything Monica said," she admitted April during one of those dinners. Ricardo held her hand, looking her in the eye. "I understand, daughter, but please believe me when I say that my greatest wish is to be here for you and for the baby. I will prove it every day, if necessary." Ricardo's patience and dedication began to bear fruit. Abril, although still insecure, began to perceive the sincerity in his father's actions. However, Monica's intrigues did not cease, and each encounter with her seemed to revive old doubts. It was then that Javier brought new information. During a visit to the mansion, he shared his discoveries. "Ricardo Abril, I found some documents and testimonies about Amanda that I think you should see." Sitting in the living room, Javier opened a folder and started talking. "Amanda had many secrets that maybe you didn't know. I discovered that after her separation, Ricardo, she faced many difficulties. But one thing was clear. She always spoke of you with love and hope." Abril was surprised. "Did my mom talk about my dad?" "Yes," Javier confirmed. "He always believed that you would change, Ricardo, and it seems that he always kept love for you despite everything. In addition, I found letters that Amanda wrote but never sent. In those letters, he talks about the hope that one day they could meet again." Ricardo felt a mixture of sadness and relief. "I did not know. This means a lot to me." Javier continued. "I also discovered that Monica was involved in some situations that hurt her relationship in the past. She has always been manipulative, and it seems that she has used that against you now." Javier's revelations cleared up many doubts and brought a new perspective. Ricardo and Abril realized that they were being manipulated by Monica and decided to confront her together. "We need to finish this, Dad," she said with determination. "We can't let Monica separate us." Ricardo agreed. "We will confront her and make it clear that we will not allow more interferences." The next day, they went to Monica's house and confronted her. "Monica, we know what you're trying to do," said Ricardo firmly, "and we will not allow you to continue. Abril and I are closer than ever." Monica tried to argue, but she realized that her manipulations had been discovered. "They don't understand." It started, but Ricardo interrupted her. "We understand perfectly, and this will be the last time we allow you to interfere in our lives." With that, Ricardo and Abril left Monica's house, feeling a weight rising from her shoulders. They returned to the mansion, where they sat together in the garden, feeling more connected and strengthened. "Dad, thank you for always believing in us," said Abril, excited. "I will always be here for you, daughter," answered Ricardo, holding his hand. "And for the baby who is about to come, together we will overcome anything." Life began to enter its course for Ricardo and Abril after confronting Monica and moving away from her negative influences. However, Javier, tireless in his search for more information about Amanda, had not stopped investigating. It was during one of his searches that he found old documents that promised to change everything. Ricardo was sitting in his office, reviewing some reports when Javier called. "Ricardo, I need to talk to you right now." I found something important. Hours later, Ricardo and Abril were meeting with Javier in the detective's office. Javier opened a worn-out folder and took out a set of letters and documents. These documents were written by Amanda and never came to be delivered to you. I thought you should see this. Ricardo took the first letter with trembling hands and began to read. Amanda's words were loaded with emotion and sincerity. Ricardo, I know that our separation was painful for both of us, but I always thought you had a great future ahead of you. I never wanted to interfere in your career, and that's why I never told you about my pregnancy. I knew you would do the right thing, but I also knew that your journey was just beginning. Ricardo felt a wave of sadness and gratitude when reading Amanda's words. She had made an unimaginable sacrifice, putting her future above her own needs and those of her daughter. He sacrificed himself so that I could follow my dreams, he said with a broken voice. Javier continued, There is more, Ricardo. Amanda wrote several letters explaining her reasons and talking about how she always hoped that they could meet again someday. Ricardo and Abril read each of the letters, their emotions oscillating between a deep sadness and a new understanding of Amanda's love and devotion. In one of the letters, Amanda described her dreams for Abril, wishing to grow up in a loving and full of opportunities. Abril, with tears in his eyes, looked at Ricardo. He always wanted the best for us, even if that meant sacrificing yourself. Ricardo felt, feeling a deep connection with Amanda through his words. She was an incredible woman, and all we can do now is honor her sacrifice by living fully and creating a bright future for our baby. The discovery of these documents brought a new dimension to the relationship between Ricardo and Abril. They realized that the strength and resilience they felt came largely from the unbreakable love of Amanda. Ricardo especially felt a deep responsibility to be the father and grandfather that Amanda had always wanted. In the days that followed, Ricardo and Abril continued to support each other, now with a deeper understanding of their past. They decided to create a small tribute to Amanda in the mansion, a special corner with her photos and letters, where they could remember her and the love that united them. During one of those nights, while they were sitting in the garden, Ricardo took Abril's hand. I promise that I will honor your mother's sacrifice every day. I will be by your side and by the baby's side, doing everything possible to ensure that we have the life that Amanda always wanted for us. Abril smiled, feeling more connected to her father than ever. We will do it together, Dad. And I know that wherever you are, my mom is happy to see us together. Amanda's final revelation brought unexpected peace for Ricardo and Abril. They were ready to face the future, armed with the knowledge of the great love and sacrifice that united them. The shadow of the past had turned into a light that illuminated their path, and were determined to honor Amanda's memory, living fully and loving deeply. The birth of the baby of Abril was approaching, and Ricardo's house was full of a happy expectation. Each corner of the mansion had been prepared with love and care to welcome the new member of the family. Ricardo, Abril, and Javier, now united as a family, were ready for a new beginning. The great day came a quiet morning. April entered the labor of delivery and was taken to the hospital with Ricardo and Javier by his side, offering support and encouragement. Ricardo held April's hand, transmitting calm and strength. "We are here with you, daughter. Everything will be fine," he said, with a firm but full of emotion. Hours later, the screams of a newborn resonated in the delivery room. Ricardo, with tears in his eyes, held his grandson in his arms for the first time. "Welcome to the little world," he whispered, feeling an indescribable happiness. April, exhausted but radiant, watched the scene with a heart full of love. "Dad is perfect," she said, with her eyes shining with joy. In the days that followed, Ricardo revealed himself as a dedicated and loving grandfather. She spent hours caressing the baby, talking to him, and promising him a future full of love and security. Every moment with her grandson was a new opportunity to honor Amanda's sacrifice and strengthen ties with Abril. Javier, who had become a father figure and friend to both, was also present at every step of the way. You form a beautiful family. Amanda would be proud of all of you. As time went by, the new family's routine was established. The nights filled with the baby's tears, the days with laughter and learning. Ricardo dedicated himself to teaching Abril everything he knew, and she, on her part, repaid him with her love and gratitude. The house, once marked by loneliness, now overflowed with life and joy. Abril looked at Ricardo with a serene expression. Dad, I think I've never been so happy. You, Javier, and my son are everything I've always wanted. Ricardo, excited, stopped and hugged her. You brought light to my life, daughter. And your son is the continuation of everything Amanda and I dreamt of. The months passed, and the cycle of love and sacrifice initiated by Amanda finally completed with a new generation. That one day she had lost in her ambitions. Now she found peace and happiness in her family. She knew that Amanda was present in spirit, proudly observing the family she helped build. The baby, growing surrounded by love and care, brought a renewed meaning to everyone. Each laugh, each new achievement, was celebrated as a victory of life over the adversities of the past. Abril and Javier, together, created an environment where love reigned and where Amanda's. Escucharé todas tus sugerencias. Quizás esté de acuerdo con algo, pero lo más probable es que establezca mis propias condiciones. Pero trata de no escucharme. Mira qué tipo de vida te prepararé. Angélica dijo esto y se fue. Todos se miraron unos a otros. Elena Timofeevna sacudió los hombros. No entendí nada. ¿Por qué vino aquí para introducir sus propias reglas? No tengo nada que poner condiciones aquí. Esta es mi cocina. Yo soy la anfitriona aquí. Y ella dejó allí, en el pasillo, el mando. Que intenten hacerme daño. La arreglaré de tal manera que se arrepienta de haber venido aquí. Y la mujer amenazó con un puñetazo a la puerta. Día tras día, Angelina se mordía la nariz por todas partes. Era una mujer muy enojada y constantemente se desmoronaba con todos. Ella estaba observando a todos. Ella estaba haciendo su trabajo. Ella notó cada acción de cualquier sirviente. Y, por supuesto, no se dio cuenta de que el personal llevaba comida a la calle. Notó cómo las niñas metían comida en las bolsas, contenedores y en las bolsas de basura. Y un buen día, Angélica estaba mirando a Tania. Quizás si fuera Katia, todo sería diferente. De alguna manera manejarían esta situación. Pero ese día, Tania le llevó comida a Alice. Cuando Angélica vio que Tania le estaba dando un bolso a una mujer, se enojó muchísimo. Inmediatamente saltó a la calle y corrió hacia ellos. Alice se asustó y se escapó cuando Angélica le gritó. ¿Quién eres? ¿Qué derecho tienes a estar aquí? ¿Trabajas en este restaurante? No. Entonces, ¿qué estás haciendo aquí? ¿Quién te dejó entrar aquí? Tatiana, ¿quién es esta mujer? No entiendo nada. Ella es. Angélica Vadimovna, ella es. No sé quién es. Tania estaba sorprendida y asustada. ¿Cómo no lo sabes? Así que espera. ¿A dónde vas? Vamos, detente. Aún no lo he descubierto contigo. Angélica agarró a Alice de la mano. Los dedos apretados de esta mujer fuerte presionaron firmemente la mano de Alice. La mujer ni siquiera podía moverse de su lugar. A pesar de que ella intentó escapar. No irás a ninguna parte hasta que arregle las cosas contigo. Dime, Tatiana, ¿qué clase de mujer es esta? ¿Y por qué le sacas estos paquetes? ¿Qué hay en ellos? ¿Estás robando algo? No, no. No estoy robando nada. Estos son solo jarrones. Tania casi lloró. ¿Qué quieres decir con jarrones? ¿Le estás regalando jarrones a esta mujer? ¿No estás bromeando? Dios mío, ¿qué lío está pasando aquí? ¿Y por qué haces esto, Tatiana? Yo, solo le estoy dando los objetos. Yo no hice nada de eso. Solo le estoy dando los objetos. Tengo que tirarlos a la basura. ¿Y por qué no los tiras? No sé. Esta mujer preguntó. Angélica abrió sorprendentemente los ojos y miró a Tatiana. Esta mujer te pidió que le dieras los chalecos y tú se los sigues llevando. ¿Estás loco? ¿Qué clase de lío está pasando aquí? Por favor, déjame ir. Alice oró, tratando de sacar su mano. Angélica la miró y movió las cejas espantosamente. Espera, aún no he descubierto quién eres. ¿Cómo llegaste aquí? A través de la puerta. ¿A través de la puerta? ¿Quién te lo dijo? ¿Gato? ¿Tatiana? No, no, no fue Tatiana. Por favor, déjame ir. Necesito ir a casa con los niños. ¿Tú también tienes hijos, pobrecita? Entonces, ¿por qué no estás con ellos ahora? Ya es tarde y estás por aquí pidiendo dinero. Dios, eres tan patético. Llamaré a la policía ahora. Y les diré que entraste aquí haciendo trampa y trataste de robar comida. No, no, la policía no. Por favor, tengo 3 hijos pequeños. No tengo a nadie más. Están sentados solos en casa. Si la policía me lleva, podría pasarles algo. Por favor, no hagas esto. Te lo ruego. Haré cualquier cosa. Por favor, no llames a la policía. Alice oró casi llorando. Angélica se asustó mucho más al apretarle la mano. Luego vete y no vuelvas para no volver a verte aquí aunque te vuelva a ver aquí. Te arrepentirás entonces definitivamente te llamaré. La policía y a mí no nos importaran tus hijos, tú me entiendes y te entiendo. Alice susurró. Definitivamente me entendiste. Nuestro próximo encuentro será decisivo para usted. ¿Lo entendiste, pequeño mendigo? Vamos, sal de aquí. Mendigo. Y Angélica finalmente soltó la mano de Alice. Alice inmediatamente tartamudeó. Se aferró, casi se cae. Y luego se dio vuelta y corrió hacia la puerta de hierro. Tan pronto como la mujer se escondió. Angélica se llevó las manos al pecho y se volvió hacia Tania. La niña se puso de pie y suspiró. De miedo, sus ojos se volvieron redondos como monedas de 5 rublos. Y lo resolveremos contigo. ¿Estás tan desconsolado? Te enseñaré cómo comportarte en un establecimiento decente. Vamos, vete. Muévete más rápido. Tania, secándose las lágrimas, fue al restaurante. Angélica volvió a mirar la puerta de hierro y se encogió de hombros. Debemos asegurarnos de que el código de bloqueo esté cambiado. Y luego ella también se escondió detrás de la puerta azul. Dmitri Alexandrovich exhaló y se tapó los ojos con la mano. Qué cansado estaba de estos problemas. Una cosa, otra cosa. Le resultó difícil arreglársela solo con el restaurante. Dmitri Alexandrovich. Realmente no sé cómo sucedió, dijo Stepan. Dmitri Alexandrovich se quitó las manos de la cara y miró al jefe de seguridad. Stepa, no te culpo. Entiendo perfectamente que a veces en la vida pasa de todo. Sin embargo, debemos resolver esto y rápidamente. Estabas mirando las cámaras de videovigilancia. Estaba mirando, pero no noté nada, se justificó Stepan. Bien, pensaré en lo que puedo hacer con él. ¿Sabes qué? Tráeme los registros aquí. Me los llevaré a casa y miraré los datos. Quizás vea algo con mis propios ojos. Una cosa es cuando algo de la comida desaparece, pero cuando el procesador de alimentos desaparece en paquetes, es demasiado. Hay que cortarlo. Y lo antes posible. Por supuesto, Dmitri Alexandrovich, lo traeré todo, dijo Stepan y se fue apresuradamente. Dmitri Alexandrovich volvió a suspirar y empezó a hojear los documentos que había sobre la mesa. Su personal se ha quejado durante mucho tiempo de que faltan demasiadas cosas. Y todo seguido. Ahora el asunto ha llegado a la mesa del comedor. No, pero, ¿es esto pensable? Roba la vajilla. ¿Quién la necesita? Por supuesto que son bonitos, caros, pero ser tan descarado ya es el colmo del descaro. Nada. Descubrirá quién es este cocinero descarado que trabaja en un restaurante e intentará ser castigado de la siguiente manera. Y comenzó a mirar la pantalla del portátil. Tomando pequeños sorbos, observó atentamente cada movimiento de los empleados y, a veces, rebobinó la grabación varias veces. Y luego, Sacrifice was honored every day. Sitting in the garden, with the baby in her arms and a brill and Javier by her side, Ricardo felt a deep peace. For the first time in many years, he felt that his life was complete. The void that he had loaded for so long had been filled with the love and the family that he had built. We're starting a new life together, Ricardo thought, looking at the sky. And all this is thanks to you, Amanda. I promise we will make this world a better place for our grandson. With all the love you taught us. The months turned into years in Ricardo's life. April, Javier, and little Miguel, as they had decided to call the baby, flourished in harmony and joy. Ricardo's mansion, that once was a symbol of loneliness and regret, now resounded with laughter, music, and the cheerful noise of a growing child. Miguel, with his big, curious eyes and contagious smile, quickly became the center of attention and the link that united all even more. Each achievement in his life, the first steps, the first words, was celebrated with great enthusiasm and love. One day, while they were gathered in the garden for a picnic, Abril brought to dinner an idea that had been maturing in his heart. Dad, Javier, I've been thinking. I'd like to do something to honor my mom. Something that perpetuates her legacy of love and sacrifice. Ricardo and Javier exchanged accomplices' glances. Both knew how much Amanda meant to Abril and how her sacrifice had shaped their lives. What do you have in mind, daughter? Ricardo asked, interested. April smiled with a sparkle in her eyes. I was thinking about creating a foundation in my mother's name. An institution that helps single mothers and children in vulnerable situations. Something that makes a difference in these people's lives, just like you did in mine. The idea touched Ricardo's heart deeply. He always wanted to find a way to pay back Amanda's love and sacrifice. It seems like a wonderful idea, he said, excited. Let's make this happen. Amanda deserves this tribute and many people can benefit. With the support of Ricardo and the experience of Javier, they began to plan the foundation. They worked tirelessly to establish the structure of the institution, define its objectives, and raise funds. Ricardo used his influence and contacts to guarantee the success of the project. The inauguration of the Amanda Foundation was an exciting event. Made in Ricardo's mansion, now transformed into a symbol of hope and rebirth, it had the presence of friends, partners, and many who supported the cause. Abril made a moving speech, remembering everyone the sacrifice of his mother and the love that guided her actions. This foundation is a tribute to my mother, Amanda. It began in April, holding Miguel in her arms. She sacrificed so much so that I could have a better life. Today, we want to return that love, helping other mothers and children to have a brighter future, thanks to all who made this possible. Ricardo, seeing with pride, felt a deep peace. The cycle of love and sacrifice initiated by Amanda now manifested in concrete actions that benefited so many lives. She approached Abril and Miguel, wrapping them in a loving hug. You have done something incredible, daughter, he said with a broken voice due to emotion. Amanda would be very proud. Javier, always discreet, approached and put his hand on Ricardo's shoulder. You have created a legacy, Ricardo. A legacy of love that transcends generations. As time went by, the Amanda Foundation grew, playing many lives and becoming a beacon of hope for mothers and children in difficulties. Ricardo, Abril, Javier, and Miguel continued to work together, strengthening even more the family ties and ensuring that Amanda's sacrifice was never forgotten. Ricardo's mansion became a vibrant and welcoming home, where the past and the present were harmoniously united, creating a future full of promises. With every laugh of Miguel, with every shared hug, Amanda's legacy lived and flourished. And so, the love, sacrifice, and redemption of Ricardo, Abril, and Amanda's story was completed, showing that even in the face of adversity, true love always finds a way to prevail.